I'd like to mention now a very important defensive skill, which is at least as important as counterplay or economy. It's patience. Yes, let's get that absolutely straight. If you want to be a good chess player, you will have to cultivate patience in your games, and this is especially important when you're defending a colourless position where you've got nothing to do. Inevitably, in chess, you're going to be playing against skilled players who know exactly how to force you onto the defensive, and occasionally you will just find yourself in a prospectless situation. The key to these situations is not to make things worse. I can't stress this too highly. A lot of players are just impulsive, or they get bored defending this horrible position. They lash out, they make mistakes, they just make things worse, and as a result they make the opponent's task of winning that much easier. What you've got to do is to ride out the storm, exhibit patience, exhibit an eye for counterplay. When the opponent gives you a chance, you've got to be alert to it and take it. And if you can do that, you're going to become an awful lot stronger at chess, and you're going to become a player people don't like to play against, because they'll know if they've got you down, they can't count you out. You are going to make yourself a very tenacious defender. Now, to illustrate finally this idea of patience in defence, I've chosen a game from the Austrian Team Championship played in 2008. Playing white is a guy called Jan Smolen. He's graded 24.45, that's strong international master standard. And playing black, Vitaly Kunin, who's graded 2.538. And the opening is quite an interesting one, in that by playing e5, black is allowing white to exchange the queens at an early stage and trap the black king in the middle. Now, you would have thought that this would be good for white, especially after bishop c4, when Kunin plays bishop e6, allowing his pawns to be doubled. And there's no doubt about it that the vast majority of players would walk away from black's position. They just think it was too difficult. They would think, A, the king is stuck in the middle, B, black's got pawn weaknesses in the centre that he can't get rid of, and C, you know, the task over the next 20 or 30 moves would be a purely defensive one. Well, there is some light at the end of the tunnel for black. I mean, a lot of strong players go in for this position, so there must be something in it. What on earth does black see that gives him hope for the future in this position? Okay, well, let's take first the problem of the king. Yes, it's true, the king is stuck in the middle, but with the queens off the board, that might not at all be a bad thing. In the endgame, the king is a strong piece. Black is anticipating further exchanges, patient manoeuvring, and in the end, his king will be in the right place. Black's central pawns are indeed weak, but how is white going to attack them? It's not that easy. It's very simple for black to defend these pawns, and for the time being, they cover a lot of central squares. So white has got it all to do. There's no doubt about it. He does have a small advantage in this position, but it's not at all easy to realise this advantage. And any thought of a quick attack against black's position is, well, not really applicable. You know, black can cover his king, for instance, as he did in the game with bishop d6. And after f3, Kunin played king e7. Well, it's going to be very difficult to get to the black king. So, yes, white has the initiative, but with patient defence, black should be able to gradually sap white's strength and hopefully develop winning chances as the game progresses. Well, how is this done? Okay, for the time being, white castles, that's a good move. And after a6, another patient move, keeping the white knight out of b5, white continued with h4. This is perhaps already a step in the wrong direction, as pawns can't go backwards. And as they advance further and further forwards, it's not always the case that by gaining space in this manner, the pawn becomes stronger. The h-pawn, I don't know, that might have been delayed. White might have preferred an idea such as knight h3 in this position, or simply knight ge2. Where white goes from here is not at all clear, because there are no real entry points into black's camp. I suppose with h4, white is trying to, for instance, cramp black by playing h5, but Kunin is on the ball and once again defends very patiently with g6. White plays knight h3, black plays knight bd7, Knight e2, and now black gains a little bit of space on the queen side with b5. Black saying, well, that move helps me. I'm controlling the important square c4. I don't see you being able to attack that pawn cluster on b5 and a6 very easily. So I'm making small improvements in my position. In general, in a position like this when you're black, you've got to concentrate on very small things. Just make your position slightly better, move by move, and hope that something turns up. Certainly, black is almost waiting for white to do something, but white is struggling to find an active plan. And when your opponent's in that position, they can't see what to do precisely, and they're struggling to find good squares for their pieces. A mistake could easily occur. Well, okay, black continues with the patient play. He plays b4. White plays knight f2. Black plays rook h8, and now the only move which g6 might have been considered a mistake because of bishop g5 pinning the knight, after which black unpins with king f7. So it's all very patient stuff. White thinks to himself, okay, I can exchange some pieces here and go for an ending where I've got a good knight against the bad bishop. Alright, black continues to exchange. He's not especially worried by this. And he moves aside out of the way of white's potential pressure on the f-file with king e7. King d2, white is getting in on the act, moving his king towards the centre for the endgame. Rook takes the open file. Rook contests the open file. And now, for the first time in this game, black plays an active move. Rook f4. And I think it's at this point the game changes. Because whereas before, white really has been bossing the show. Okay, he hasn't been doing very much, but black has just been defending patiently the whole game through. Finally, the tables are now starting to turn. And it's black who, with rook f4, is starting to think about the initiative himself. Because, as I say, white has some pawn weaknesses. Pawns can't go backwards. Okay, white has got a potentially good knight against a bad bishop, but, well, the knight has no support points in the black camp to aim for. I mean, the white knight would love to come to f5 or d5. Those squares are covered. Meanwhile, black's threatening rook takes g4. So white's got to take this rook. Now the black pawn structure becomes ironed out. The knight goes back, and suddenly, who is better now after h5? The black bishop, far from being weak, starts to look much stronger than white's knight, and with h5, black is starting to take over the position. Well, white blocks the position with g5. Of course, if he takes on h5, black is going to recapture, and now the black rook is starting to think about becoming active on g8, after which pressure on g2 would start to mount. The pawn on h4 is also weak. Black can consider moving his king out of the way, moving the bishop to e7, and then the rook comes into g4, after which pressure against h4 would also be very strong. So that's why white blocks with g5, but far from having the advantage now, white is actually much worse after rook d8. And he's actually struggling now to find decent moves with his king. He tries the remarkable move rook h3, seeing no useful discoveries with the bishop on d6. Had he played king c1, black has the remarkable shot f3. And the point of that move is that after g takes f3, black turns the tables completely with bishop f4 check. And white has to give up a piece, because of course if he goes king b1, rook down the back, checkmate. And, well, that's the end of the game. So after rook d8, rook h3 was played, mainly to be able to block on d3 with the rook, I think. c5 by black, gaining space. c3. And now the beautiful move, f3. Unleashing black's so-called bad bishop. Another aspect of defensive play, you have to be ready with counterplay when it comes. The idea after rook takes f3 was that black was going in with bishop g3 check. Rook came to d3. There were some exchanges on h4, on d8, but I wonder whether white had overlooked black's next move, the in-between capture, bishop takes g5. Now after king d3, king takes d8, white is a pawn down. He tries to regain his pawn by taking on b4 and going king c4, but black defends himself by going bishop e7. And if it was simply a question of active kings, white would be winning hands down. But white's basic problem in this position is the 2-to-1 majority on the king side that black has now obtained by taking off those king side pawns. The way black is aiming to win this position is as follows. He wants to create a passed pawn on the king side. That will tie white down. The idea is that with white then tied down, black moves in with the king and takes white apart on the other flank. Let's see if white is able to defend himself against this idea. Obviously black's next couple of moves are completely logical. He advances the king side majority. White is trying to activate his knight to the maximum. Black moves his king to a very secure square, diagonally opposed the white knight. That means the white knight is 3 moves away from giving a check. The knight continues to move around probing, hitting the bishop, but miraculously black is not interested in retaining his bishop and plays h4. The point of this is that if white takes on e7, black is going h3. And if g takes h3, g takes h3, the knight can't actually stop that pawn. No matter how hard he tries, he simply can't get back. So after h4, it turns out that white must go knight f4, preventing h3 for the time being. But now it's time for the black king to move in with king d6. Knight d3 prevents king e5, but permits bishop f6. White plays b3. Black plays h3. Here comes the passed pawn. G takes, knight f2, only move. h2, king takes b4, bishop h4, and white decided to resign this position. After knight h1, let's say, black moves in with king e5, and white's counterplay on the queen side is far too slow. Meanwhile, black threatens simply king takes e4, and then king all the way down to h1, winning the trapped white knight. So a very patient performance initially by black, riding out the white initiative that occurred at the start of the game, and Kunin displayed a very keen eye for counterplay in that game. All the best aspects of defence were displayed by black in that game, who went on to score a famous counter-attacking victory. So let me just summarise now the main aspects of defence you have to remember. 1. Counterplay is the essence of defence. Number 2. Defend with a minimum, attack with a maximum. Therefore, economy is also very important when defending. And finally, patience is the key to success in chess, especially when you're defending. If you're worse with no counterplay, you've got to be patient and ride out the storm. Only then will you have chances of success later on in the game. If you're impatient, if you're impulsive, you will crash and burn. Okay, time to move on to something else.